Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This clip is from an actual movie called Ferris Bueller Day Off. This is an AI generated. This is a scene, a famous, iconic scene. And did Trump never watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the anyone, the Great Depression.
The great thing is here. My wife, I just showed this to my wife, and she was like, "Yeah, this," because we saw this movie when we were younger. The look of the American people here, right?
Passed the anyone, a tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act,
Which what? What did the Tariff Act do?
which anyone raised tariffs in
Raise tariffs.
an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
It's funny, but it's true. I mean, so these were things sent to me this morning. I got a bunch of little clips. There's one thing was sent to me last night. I can get into the clips first. I got a thing I want to pull off the. I got something on on the CNN video. I got to see if it's on YouTube before I copy it on the TV. But I think people are realizing we're effed. Like we're just totally effed, which is kind of funny, and then not so. It's funny now and not funny later. So this is one of my viewers sent me this. This is some Democrat from Connecticut, Chris Murphy. I misheard this in the beginning, but let's watch it.
Trump's tariffs that he announced last night, it's not economic policy, it's not trade policy, it's a political weapon designed to collapse our democracy.
You mean collapse our economy? I thought you said economy. Like it's not going to collapse the democracy, it's going to collapse the economy. I think all the people are going to be pretty clear how pissed they are at Trump and the Republicans when the economy collapses, right?
Last night, when he released his tariff plan, economists were really confused because they looked at the numbers, they looked at the formula. It made absolutely no sense as economic policy, as a means to try to bring jobs back to the United States. That's because it's not trade policy, it's not economic policy. The tariffs are another tool for President Trump to try to compel pledges of loyalty, this time from companies and industries in the United States. You have to understand that everything Donald Trump is doing is in service of staying in power forever, either him or his family or his hand.
This guy's getting it wrong. Like Trump, I mean, I'm sure Trump wants to stay in power because he's already talked about third term. But I think Trump actually believes in what he's doing because he's not, like, he doesn't know what's going on. Like you just saw when that, whatever I showed you yesterday from that press conference he held with Netanyahu, he doesn't know, like, lots of stuff. Basic stuff that everyone else knows. Like he just doesn't know shit. Like he doesn't understand what's going on. And he's so easily manipulated. And so the guy from BlackRock said that all the CEOs he talked to, I mean, this is BlackRock, which would be the biggest of the big, influence on Trump. And, so BlackRock, who's going to benefit from lots of things going on in the world right now that Trump's a part of, said that, this is a disaster for the economy. I've got that clip coming up. And so with all of that, and some of Trumpers are bailing on him because, the people that run Trump aren't interested in collapsing democracy. Like they're not interested in Trump being in power forever. What they want is to take down America. And this guy should say that instead, right? Like this is where the Democrats fail. Like he understands the basic principle, as all these other people do, that the terrorists are going to fuck America's economy. And only the most dopey Trumpers would believe in it. Like Trump has showed you over and over again, he's a dumbass. Like he's clueless. Like he doesn't know what the fuck's going on. He doesn't have a grasp of basic things. Like he was, asked his favorite biblical verse, and he couldn't give one. But he claims to be a Christian. Like he says shit all the time, but then has no depth to his character, no depth to his knowledge. He's a very shallow person. He's immature and shallow. He's obsessed with people being good looking. That's how he hires people. Like they just, how well they do in front of a camera or something like that. Like he has no, he has no care. He doesn't understand like character qualities or, anything that somebody would have internally. He's just a superficial, dopey person. And his brain is breaking down. He's 80. He's 79 or whatever he is. And so he's going to be, 82 when he leaves office. And he's going to be the oldest president in history then. Once he passes Joe Biden's being 80. When Joe Biden was 80 was president. So, Trump is, he's a perfect fall guy. He's a perfect Patsy.
Handpick successors. He's trying to destroy our democracy. That's why he is going law firm by law firm, university by university, to try to bully them into pledging loyalty to him. The tariffs are going to be used to do the same thing to private industry. Why are the tariffs so widespread? So that every business in this country has to come to the White House and make an agreement with Trump in which he gives them tariff relief in exchange for a pledge of political loyalty. What could that pledge look like? Well, maybe they agree to champion his economic policy publicly. Maybe they agree to make contributions to his political campaign. Maybe they agree to police.
Anyways, we'll see if that pans out, but I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think that he just is being let loose by the people who control the system because America has to be taken down. Okay, I saw this. It must have been around, I don't know what time it was yesterday when I turned on the TV, so I don't know, it was around dinner time or lunchtime or something. I think dinner time. This person, Casey Hunt, looks like she's in shock. So the Republicans are, and Trump supporters are starting to bail on him. They don't agree. They're in shock over what he's doing here. And so let's get into it here.
Parts of this trade war were showing promise.
I think that right now we're managing a massive number of requests for negotiations.
Nearly 50 countries have approached me personally to discuss the president's new policy and explore how to achieve reciprocity.
I think we can end up with some good deals.
Countries are falling over themselves to reform their unfair trade practices and free open their markets to our country.
But it all started to come crashing down as that was unfolding. The White House press secretary you saw there stepped to the podium. The market started to plummet as she began this briefing, insisting that those massive tariffs against China are, in fact, set to take effect tonight.
The Chinese want to make a deal, they just don't know how to do it, but the president will be implementing these 104% tariffs on China tonight.
Under what conditions might he consider lowering tariffs on China at this point?
It would be imprudent of me to tell you those conditions here from the podium.
So as we take in another wild day with the street hoping for a change, we're left here with the overarching question: is the American economy running out of time for the president to change his mind? The CEO of the massive investment firm BlackRock said yesterday that we might be.
The economy is weakening as we speak. Most CEOs I talk to would say we are probably in a recession right now. Right now.
So understand this. Larry Fink and Donald Trump have a positive relationship. Larry Fink and Donald Trump, unexpected partnership. Al BlackRock's Larry Fink won over Donald Trump. These are, he's got money, right? And so these are not that long ago. I think he brought Larry Fink up with him. Larry Fink's a real creep, and BlackRock's fucking evil, right? And, if there was some insidious plan to make these guys even richer, Trump's CEO buddies, then they'd bail in on him. So Jamie Dimon, who's in charge of, what do you call it? Chase Bank, right? So they had the biggest amount of derivatives market. Jamie Dimon's, like the kind of evilest of the evil bankers. And he's been kind of pro-Trump and thinking Trump is going to be good for business. Larry Fink and Bill Ackerman warn of economic outlook with Trump's tariffs. So all of these people, like, they're Trump people, right? And these guys know that this is going to fuck the whole economy, even these rich people, and it's going to send everything into fucking chaos. And so, that's where we are. But there's even people who are even more staunch Trump supporters who are bailing on him.
And let's remember, Main Street hasn't really started to grapple with the impact of these tariffs. Here was one car dealer's plea.
If I had a chance to sit down with the president right now, and I would absolutely tell him to please reconsider your position. I just think he has to pull back a little bit here. I think he has to soften the blow for the consumers and, the American people.
And if Trump doesn't do that, well, unlike many or maybe even most times in politics, in this case, there is very clearly only one person to give the credit or the blame.
Orange Monday. Don't call it Black Monday. It's Orange Monday. This is Trump's tariffs have absolutely decimated the market. I hate this. I hate that I've lost $20 million.
Okay, so David Portnoy was one of Trump's biggest supporters. I guess he's a pizza guy that, I don't know. He's kind of obnoxious, but I saw some video clips of him during the election, and he was all about Trump, like really all in for Trump. And now he's whining because he lost $20 million in the stock market. And, Larry Fink, the name Fink used to be like it's like a derogatory name. If you called somebody a Fink, it was kind of like calling them a snitch. Here I have the definition. A Fink, an unpleasant or contemptible person. A person informs on people to the authorities. He assumed by some to be a management's Fink. Also, failed to do something promised or expected because of lack of courage or commitment. Like a weasel. So people don't use that term anymore so much, but, just throwing it out there.
Do you think it's Donald Trump's economy now?
Oh, I think it is. There's no question.
No question. Our panel is here.
That guy's also a Republican. And then there's this guy, Scott Jennings, who shows up on this person's show. We know him from other shows. Scott Jennings was very celebratory during the election. The CNN wants to include Republican voices, so he's a Republican on CNN. And he got into it, was laughing and sort of mocking all the Democratic people on the panel when Trump won. He celebrated Trump's victory, defended Trump, came down on the Democratic Party, has been a very pro-Trump guy. I've never heard him say anything negative about Trump until the tariffs. Right? So let's go to him and also Ted Cruz.
This time. Scott Jennings, welcome back to to defending something that you obviously had argued against, the Republican Party had argued against for many years. I want to show you what Senator Ted Cruz, who has actually been out there really criticizing the president on this, and of course, he and Donald Trump had it out in 2016, but he's been a supporter since. Here's what he said earlier this week.
There are voices in the White House that want high tariffs forever. There are angels and demons sitting on President Trump's shoulders. Who does he listen to? I hope he listens to the angels.
I mean...
Yeah, look, I don't think he's going to change his mind. But what I think has to happen next for the markets to rebound and to believe that there's a future here is for these 70 countries who are calling up supposedly and asking for deals, we're going to need to see some activity on that. I think it was great that the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, has been talking about all these calls that are coming in. They're going to have to put something on the board, whether it's Japan or Vietnam or one of these other countries.
What about the EU?
That would be a big one. It strikes me that's a much more complicated conversation. But one of these countries that's an ally that's called up and said, we'd like to make a deal.
You got these guys that bring in wearing cowboy hats now, right? So anyways, this guy's bailing on, Trump. I mean, they're all confused. All these people, because it doesn't make any sense. Because Trump is a fucking dumbass, and whatever reason this is being done from the powers that be that aren't stopping him, right? Like they probably don't understand why the people who controls Trump and the shadow government people aren't, the controllers aren't stopping him. I think that's what they're all confused about, which I'll get into in a moment here.
If there's something to be done there, getting that out into the water, it strikes me, would give everybody confidence that deals can be made. Because right now, all we have, the only new evidence we have is the escalation with China. But if there are deals to be made with our allies, getting a couple of those out there rather quickly, I think would calm a lot of nerves.
And Carney, what were you hearing?
Okay, so I wrote a workbook about transforming abuse, like taking the abusive energy inside of you, the trauma, the whatever it is, PTSD, whatever the stuff that happens internally to people, and transforming it into something else, which is kind of a unique perspective. And I'd have to rewrite the workbook. I mean, I know a lot more now than I did then, and it's just not going to happen. But part of what I was talking about is the various the hows, the whys, right, the where, these things. When you're thinking about a situation, there's the what, there's the how, there's the why, there's the when. And things are sometimes about one of those specific words, like one of those, defining words. And, the how is whatever it is in this situation. It's not important. How Trump is doing this is not that important. And the where, we know where the where is, right? It's the world and it's America. The when, again, it's now and it's, into the future, but it's now. And so the two questions left are the what and the why. What is this really about and why is it happening, right? Those are the two questions. People are puzzled. And they're both answered by the same thing because the why explains the what. And I've understood the why now for a while about all this stuff. Whether it's this or something else, the why is going to be that the divine forces, the divine contingencies, the divine, any of the divine the aspect of the divine system wants America to end, right? So whatever happens with all the people who are involved in that, whether it's the so-called controllers, whether it's, foreign leaders, whether it's, weather or, whatever it is, weapons, war, whatever happens to take America down, it's backed by the divine will. And when something's backed by the divine will, you can't fight it. You just can't fight it. Like, at some point you realize this is God's will. I bow before you. Like, I don't like it, but I bow before you. So it's God's will that America and the world government be taken down to whatever extent, that there are drastic changes. And in that, there's going to be massive depopulation. There's going to be a massive die-off. Like, that's going to happen. There's going to be people dying and less people being born, less babies being born. At some point in the near future, you're going to see there's going to be less people. There's going to be, a population reduction. More people dying and less people being born. Especially the second one. Less people being born, less babies. It's going to be hard for people to reproduce. And there's going to be so many reasons for that, right? And so those are the only things you need to know, that this is backed by God's will. And of course it is. All of it. And so in terms of the population reduction, overpopulation happens in small areas. It doesn't spread throughout the globe. Like, this is a very American, very human idea that it's global population. But it's the cities. If you go to cities and you go to dense population areas, you can see the effects of overpopulation, and people aren't supposed to live like that. And so it's the cities and these basically insect colonies where people are packed on top of each other and they go insane. People are insane in the cities, especially the dense populated areas, where there's the poverty that exists in these places, and you see how it just falls apart. Criminality, self-abuse, self-destructive tendencies, things that are just there in dense populations, and just a wanting to to kill yourself in one way, destroy yourself, self-abuse, eating and taking poisons, doing risky behaviors, self-destructive behaviors. This is what happens when any overpopulated, when there's overpopulation of some mammal species, and the pollution and the mental illness and things that happen ultimately lead to massive die-offs, like weakening of the people get the species gets weaker. They have more and more weak, babies, weak people that are born who are, just because of the population surplus, they get less nutrition, and there's no thinning of the herd, right, where the weak are being eaten by predators and being killed off, where weak people are being supported by the system. And our system supports weak, dumb, stupid people and allows them to exist when, incompetent people who couldn't make it if they had to live in a natural human society where they had to do natural human things. They just wouldn't be strong enough if they had to, again, with the climate control and the medicines we have and things. There's so many weak-ass people out there and it's getting weaker with each generation, that wouldn't make it in any other circumstance. They just don't have enough fight in them. They don't have enough, juice. They don't have enough, testosterone. They don't have enough physical, whatever it is, right? Mental toughness. They're just, weak. They're weak on every level. And these are all things that happen in overpopulated type situations. And then there's massive die-off, and there's going to be a massive die-off, and that's God's will. And so all these things are a part of that, to reduce the population and bring down a demonic system. It's just, inevitable. And so whether it's Trump's tariffs or something else, there's all these warning signs and things, and, but there's no way for people to really fix the problems because people aren't willing to change, and they're not even willing to look at this idea that the system's fucked and you have to do something better. They're not going to abandon this system and don't have the ability to do so. Like, let's say everyone realized our system's fucked and we have to do something better. There's no better out there. And most people couldn't make it in a system that was more natural and where you'd be a natural human being. Most people can't connect to divinity within them. They can't do what they're supposed to do to become, to fix the situation. So these things are going to happen. And then if you look at it that way, then none of this stuff really matters. Like, that's why I feel relaxed about it, because, I've accepted that this will eventually happen, and whatever events unfold to make it happen, it's God's will. And there's nothing that anybody can do about it. And it's not the controllers. It's not some evil geniuses. This is a bad system. And the system will be taken down by its people. Like, the people will take the system down because the people are now sucky. So the people are a product of the system. And they're now, cancer on the system. And the system's a cancer on people. The whole thing is cancerous. And that, all of it's going to contribute to the downfall of whatever we, call this system, whatever this, the beastly system. And, whatever Trump is or isn't doing, whatever deal he's making, whatever's plan he has, whatever's going on with him, whatever orders he's receiving, whatever it is, like, people want to get into that part of the why of it. And it's silly because it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what Trump's motivation, what his actual plan is, what his thinking is, what his, people are thinking, whether they believe in this or not, whether they're being told to do this, whether there's some, the people in the system who are, certainly there's people, the controllers are wanting to take America down. I've said this for a long time because it's not sustainable. And so, not just America, if America goes down, the world economy goes down. But there's going to be other things. And we're inching closer to World War III. I don't know if inching is or running towards it. I don't know, what the correct, whatever it is. But that's where we're at, right? Like, that's where the American, government and economy and the world economy is at. But it's being divinely orchestrated. So if that's true, which why wouldn't it be? Like I said, why would God want to save this system? And nobody could come up with a legitimate answer. Because why would God want to save this system? Right? Like, everybody's documenting on both sides, the Democrats, Republicans, certainly everybody in the truth community, what a shitty demonic system this is. And yet we all desperately want it to be saved because we're dependent on it. That's the only reason that we're dependent on it. That God will take into consideration that we're dependent on it, and God doesn't give a fuck about that. God isn't some dude that you can appeal to. Divinity does what divinity does, and death is a part of everything. Death and destruction is a part of God and divinity. And this thing needs to die, and it needs to be destructed and destroyed. And so, it's going to happen. And there's, like I said, accepting that, just the logic of it, and just what it feels like. And it's just, things are weird out there. Yesterday the Denver Nuggets fired their, basketball coach. That's the winningest coach in their history. He's kind of an asshole, Mike Malone. He's very aggressive. He's very, and maybe he lost his team because he yells at him a lot, or, there's various reasons. But 2 years ago they won the championship. They had to win. They could have won the championship last year, and they were one of the better teams most of the year. And now they're having some issues, and everyone's kind of stunned that they fired not only him, but he was in some kind of power struggle with the general manager, and they fired that guy as well. Just 4 games left in the season. And then I was going through a game that was a blowout between the Charlotte Hornets and the Memphis Grizzlies. And this guy was going in for a dunk, and some guy came out of nowhere and just undercut the guy and knocked him out. I was wondering if the guy was dead or paralyzed. He was clearly, they had to take him out of his stretcher. And the Charlotte Hornets were losing by 20. And they're tanking. They're trying to get a better draft pick and get this guy Cooper Flag. But you see shit like this all the time. I see, in the news, you see this, and then just in life, people are making weird decisions. They're just not thinking things through, making big mistakes. You're going to see this more and more, not just with Trump, but across the board. Things that illogical decisions, self-destructive decisions. These are, this is part of the year of the chaos that's folding into, the end of the stuff, right? People are just, they're going to do things that are going to destroy the system individually and the people in power, and just why are you doing that? Doesn't make any sense kind of things, because that's part of it. That's what's happening here. And so if you understand it's the divine will for the system to go down, and it's, whatever that means and whatever that's going to look like. So the other piece to this is it's because people have to change, and people aren't going to change otherwise. Desperate people, and going to have to come back to God, and people are going to have to come back to God because they're going to be so desperate, because they're, you don't need God right now. The system, money is your God, right? Money fixes all problems. You need God, but you don't know you need God, right? But there'll be a time where things are so desperate, it'll be so harsh living conditions that people will have to beseech God for forgiveness, right? And not that God wants that, but it's what people need to do, right? Forgiveness to your soul, forgiveness to God, forgiveness to the divinity and the divine order that we've all contributed to this demonic system. And so let me go to these other things. I got a bunch of kind of funny clips to show you. And then we'll, I don't know if I'll come back to tariffs at the end of this video. I don't know. It's just obvious what's happening here. And, the fact that Trump's people are bailing on him, which they, of course they are, because they didn't think he was this stupid. They didn't think he would do something this crazy. But he is. And whatever reason he's doing it, there's only one outcome. So this is the Gaza Strip. They call this self-defense. Holy shit, right? This is what Trump was saying about how, look at this is what it looks like out there. They just bombed the shit out of this area, and there's all, this populated area. But it's just, Israel's just defending itself. This is, and then going to glom this very valuable piece of real estate. So, it is kind of wonderful too. So here we go. See, this is where AI is great. And this is promoting Cheetos, I guess. There he is. That's the beginning of it. So AI memes are now, definitely people are using AI with for the best possible reason, with making memes. So getting a lot of these videos. I looked at one of them, and now I'm getting a bunch, which I'm glad about.
Then police officers in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, were asking people to be on the lookout for a man who robbed a store. And I think we do have his description. Can we take that? Let's take his description.
So they obviously, this is kind of like a comedy bit for the news, but this is an actual police sketch.
Okay, this is the guy they wanted people in Pennsylvania to be out on the lookout for. He's got a nose and some hair that goes like that, and he was wearing a hat at the time of this particular crime. He's got kind of
he's wearing a hat when he committed the crime.
Kind of a chin that comes down to almost a point. Stands about 5 feet 4 inches tall. There it is. Get a good look for yourself. Oh, and now I'm getting word that police actually caught this guy, thanks to the sketch, no doubt. So here's a picture of the real guy next to the sketch that led to his arrest.
Where's the pointy chin?
It's uncanny, Lisa. The guy on the left is now charged with 2 counts of theft, is being held in the Lancaster jail. And I say give that sketch artist a raise.
This wouldn't be so funny, except it's a real sketch.
That was actually the sketch that police sent out to the good folks in Lancaster. And, hey, to their credit,
They've got him.
they came through.
They got him. Okay, so I got a bunch of quirky things to get to. Young Thug fan accidentally gets tattooed with the wrong lyrics from his song. Horses don't stop, they keep going. I'm not sure what it was supposed to be, but it's kind of funny. And then there's this. So let me start from the beginning here. This is Alec Baldwin's life. Now you think Alec Baldwin got away with murder. Most people think that or whatever. I don't know what to think about that. I don't care. But he definitely didn't get away with anything because he's being tortured by his wife, his demonic fucking crazy ass wife, nut snipping off wife, right? And now she's trained her kids, especially her daughters, to demean this motherfucker, which is what constantly goes on. Okay, so I switched over to TikTok because I can control the volume here. A lot of these are TikTok videos that people send me on Instagram.
Zip up your fly.
So she...
Zip up your fly. And...
Okay, so she says, zip up your fly in a very condescending, demeaning way. And then she slaps him on the butt. And then she says...
And,
I don't have a fly.
Oh, I thought you were trying to zip up your fly, and I'm going to do it.
So he actually was grabbing his crotch while he was sitting down. Because she saw him zipping up his fly when he didn't have one. But, this is his life now. Like, he's got all these ball-busting, women in his life. They're being trained by their mom. She doesn't have a Spanish accent because, she... Why would she?
Upstairs. My jacket. No, we have a pact. I want to make an agreement with you right now with our witnesses here.
All of our witnesses. My witness.
The agreement I want to have is we're going to only say positive things. Nothing negative. No picking on Daddy.
There's not much to pick on.
She's getting that straight from her mom. This just ball-busting bitch behavior, right? And this is Alec Baldwin's life. I haven't watched the show, but his kids just demean him. Everybody talks to him like he's a piece of shit. And his wife is always, cutting off his nuts, and she's basically destroyed his life. His wife, who's from Boston, Spain, and this whole thing. So, let the punishment fit the crime. So these birds saw another bird being fed that was wounded. So they all started to imitate this thing. My wife sent me these. I think these are magpies. I don't know, or something. Look at them. And they're sitting back here at the door pretending to be hurt. So they get So this is just, they're training these. They're being trained by the person to act fake and, fake that you're getting hurt. That goes to show you, I mean, what's happened with you. They're flopping, right? They're showing what humans do. So on the other side of the bird thing, this was very interesting. My wife sent me this a few days earlier. There are birds who are so used to being fed, they don't understand why the food doesn't jump into their mouth. He's so open his mouth and wondering why it's just the mealworm or whatever that is not going in, right? Like, why is it right away from my mouth? This also is like kind of a good understanding of what's happening in America right now, right? Like, why is the food not going in? Why? It drops right into my mouth. So this is a thread. This is a close-up of a longhorn beetle's face. This is a microscope thread. This one here, this ramen noodles. There's all this stuff on it. All these little bugs and parasites and stuff in there. There. It's just crawling around in your food. And so, at least it's boiled when you go to eat it. Stick that under there, see what happens. There's lots of stuff there. Oh, so that's good. It's all in your food. This one, they're showing you what a leaf looks like. And there's some those drops of water. Things are coming out of it, right? He's cut the leaf of these little bits of liquid is coming out of the cut in the leaf. This one, a T cell and a cancer cell. T cell hits the cancer cell and starts to dying cancer cell. So that's a good one. This is somebody's eye here. Interesting one.
Is no longer
see what this guy's say.
exclusive to humans. Florida carpenter ants were observed selectively treating the leg wounds of fellow nestmates, either by directly cleaning the wound or a full amputation of the leg. Not only did these treatments aid in their recovery, but the research team found the ants' choice of care catered to the type of injury presented to them.
Okay, so they got medical care there. Single drop of seawater. Look at all this stuff in it. I mean, it's just all these little microscopic creatures. When I was a kid, I was telling my wife about this. She said this to me, so we were talking about it. And, I was in grade school, like 3rd grade, 4th grade, something like this. And we had microscopes, and they had all these little microscopic creatures. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I really loved it. And I never did it again in my life, right? And I was like, this is something we have to pursue, like just all the stuff that you can see, all these little microscopic creatures and all this, the stuff that's beyond your visual field. They're still advertising Chloe in Wonderland. Khloe Kardashian, Chloe, the big one. This is still up there for, So, breaking: Kentucky County issues flood warning and immediate mandatory evacuation after 10 walls of dam we accidentally opened. Check local listings and pray for Kentucky as we are serving some of the hardest areas. And it keeps coming. I'll post in comments as I gather more information, I assume the person was saying. I have a few people who are on Facebook. And, like I said, I don't go very much on Facebook. I don't scroll very much. And so, it's they were marking themselves safe. So I didn't know why. I knew there was lots of rain. There's been lots of flooding, flash floods. But this happened when I was in Chennai, India. When I was in the flood, they just opened the floodgates, and they said because the dam was going to burst, there was too much pressure on it. But they opened it up at 5 a.m, and it killed hundreds and displaced thousands, and 4/5 of a city of 25 million people was flooded. And so let's go to Chloe in Wonderland. The Kardashians' ability to weasel their way into any, all forms of successful, whatever it is, industry, or in this case, social media, like they have to have a podcast, right? Like what do they have to say? Like what do you have to offer the American people with your fucking podcast?
People don't just like, well, here's this prescription, take this, and we'll see you in 6 months and see if it works.
No, I work really hard to say things as simply as I can because I never want the words to get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a high school course called Brain Thrive by 25. I'm so excited about it.
He's pretty excited about it. He's pretty excited.
And it was studied. So it's 12 weeks, 24 hours. We teach middle schoolers, high schoolers to love and care for their brain.
Oh, I love that.
I love that. That's a great idea. You guys got to love your brain. You guys got to learn to love your brain and care for it.
Decreases drug, alcohol, and tobacco use, decreases depression, and it improves self-esteem.
Yes.
And
boom, it's working. It's fucking working, you guys.
That's the answer to this epidemic problem. And people go, oh, it's social media. And yeah, social media is part of it. And oh, it's our ultra-processed foods. Yeah, and that's part of it. But nobody loves and cares for their brain. If you love and care for it...
everything's better if you treat your brain like a lover and care for it. Take care of your brain. Why guys take care of your brain?
Because you realize that's your future.
Your future is your brain.
You're just less likely to smoke pot, which is not innocuous, right?
No.
That's the messaging, is it's innocuous.
Boom. She's like, oh, man, I got to quit pot. Chloe, been a big one. Okay, so let's go here. This just popped up. This is the mathematician or economist or something who created a formula that Trump is using, and the guy's saying he's using it in the wrong way. There's full-blown panic, and like amongst many of Trump supporters, people who voted for him, people who, Trump would say this, bring some financial guru on stage with them, like, these type of people, some billionaire, CEOs. They're all flabbergasted by not all of them, but many of them are coming out flabbergasted. And it's the kind of thing where the people who are, who are supporting Trump are just either brain dead or yes men. People are just so oblivious because they're so desperate to believe in something, right? This is the problem with Trumpers. It's a cult of Trump, where they're just so desperate to believe in him that, and it's going to be done either way, so they're just hoping it's going to work out because, this is already in play. So there's no stopping it now. Like whatever happens, even if he reversed the tariffs, lots of the damage has already been done. And so let's watch this here. More on Trump advisors feud over trade war gets ugly.
Joining me now is Brent Nyman. He's an economist and former Treasury official in the Biden administration. His research was cited by the Trump White House, really to help them justify the reciprocal tariff rates. So they said, look at this research, look at this. This is where we get this crucial number that gets us to these stratospheric tariff rates. So, Brent, I really appreciate your taking the time here. I just want to start off with you because we've got
China and Europe have just upped their tariffs, right? So it's a war. Like this is a trade war going on. So
math, and I've spent a lot of today. I've got my, going through the math. Sorry, I'm just holding it up for people that we were going through. So you see these high tariff rates, and Trump sitting there on the screen, and it's scrolling by country after country after country, and you see your works used to justify them. What did you think in that moment?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron, for having me on the show. On Wednesday of last week, I was in a University of Chicago macroeconomics seminar, and my phone started blowing up with those pictures of the president in the rose
like we realized he's going to be blamed.
garden with that screen with really big numbers and many more countries listed than I thought. And so with apologies to the speaker, I couldn't really focus. And then the next day I woke up and there was a bunch of emails from journalists in my inbox, and a former colleague had posted that they released the methodology explaining what they had done to calculate these tariffs. And they had cited, not many papers, and one of them was a paper I wrote together with Alberto Cavallo, Gita Gopinath, and Jenny Tang. So I started digging in and looking at, how my work could have possibly informed this policy, which I really think is a terrible policy. So I ended up writing an op-ed on it, and I think it's been well received so far.
All right, so
it's bad when you're using somebody's work to justify your policies, and the person's like, yeah, you got it wrong, which we'll get into here in a second.
You're shocked because you couldn't understand how your could be used in this way. I just want to ask you, though, because there's how your work was used incorrectly, and then there's the premise of what they've done. The premise of what they have done basically is, as you've described it, do unto others as they do unto you. Right? That they, that the way they define reciprocal, the premise that they have approached this with. Do you support that, just on its base, forgetting the math that they use? Do you support their logic?
Well, they build it as a reciprocal tariff. What I was expecting is that they would look at what other countries charge as tariffs to the United States, and if they're 2, 3, 4 percentage points higher, we might try to bridge that gap with a reciprocal tariff of our own. Maybe they would look also at non-tariff barriers, et cetera, but they did nothing of the sort. The main issue with these tariffs is that they defined them such that they would eliminate bilateral trade deficits between the United States and every trade partner that we have in the world, one by one, where we run deficits. And once you make that the goal of the policy, it's over. You're done. Whatever formula you come up with and whatever number.
Yeah, that was Trump's stated goal. That he said that there's trade deficits, but he wasn't looking at like software and these other things that were service-based. So there's that. And he wasn't looking at, some of these countries, they don't have any money and they can't buy American stuff. And their currency is devalued. But they grow our food, for example, or, things like this. So they're almost like a colony, an economic colony, which, you're going to show up at the grocery store and there's going to be like massive amount of produce that's either going to be astronomical in price or it's just not going to be there. And when that starts hitting people, because when things like that, I've said this over and over again, most of the things that have been done the last, my lifetime even, don't end up affecting me in a way that I can see it. The things that have affected me, policies by the president, national policies, ways that might affect us without knowing it, right? So going to the airport and having to go through a naked body scanner and getting irradiated and having to have them search your luggage and just all the it just was suckier to go through the airport than it used to be, right? Airport security. More time consuming, taking your time away, things like that. So that's something like where you're like, all right, this is worse. This has happened and it's worse. And then there's things that have happened that make your life better and easier. Something like shopping on Amazon, which is a recent thing, or the internet, or using, GPS. And, there's things where you're like, wow, this is better than it used to be. You know, and like using GPS is better in one way, but then people don't learn how to read maps, and that's an issue, right? And so people don't learn to make a mental map of where they live. They just GPS everything. So there's also negative effects for some of these things. But, you know, where something directly affects you. COVID directly affected everybody. You had to wear a fucking mask. That sucked. You know, for people who didn't like them, like I didn't, you know, it was like wearing a muzzle. It was like, you know, it was causing me breathing issues. I didn't like it. It negatively affected me. And then, you know, the grocery stores being emptied. And then now, of course, prices being hiked, various things, right? One time we drove, my wife and I, you know, drove out of state and we went, you know, on a trip during COVID and there's no one on the road. Like, that was nice, right? So there's these things that happen. And getting COVID, I fucking had it and it sucked. But it made me take a deeper look at my health, and that's worked out to my benefit. So COVID actually helped me in the long run, but it affected me being sick, and you know, it was kind of sucky that, especially the first one, where we're having trouble breathing. So you know, you have these things, and so the tariffs are going to directly affect people in a negative way. And Trump can say everything. He's now saying he's playing the long game. Well, nobody said play the long game. Like, no fucking buddy elected you to play the long game. People wanted immediate relief. You know, some dope left a comment saying that most people didn't vote for lower prices. Yeah, they did. Like, most people are very thoughtless in their understanding of anything, and they just are looking at, wow, grocery prices are way higher. Fuck Biden. Like, you know, that's just what, you know, that's their level of thinking and their level of whatever. They don't look into the depth of the economic system or any kind of long-term situation. They want the prices to be reduced. And so there are going to be effects from these tariffs. If they're not, they're not. And, you know, it's everything that I say about how things are now. If things don't directly affect people, then it doesn't matter. You know, people won't rebel, people won't flip out. But when they do, when things start, like you lose the internet, you lose electricity, you lose food, you know, some of the big things. Your gas goes up, you know, prices go up, whatever it is, and you start feeling it, that's when people are going to freak out. And when people don't get their needs met, and one of the biggest ones is the internet because it's a distraction. And if you aren't able to access your content, then that'll set people afire. Like they'll wake up from their stupor. Anyways.
You plug into that formula, you're not going to get a good trade policy. You're instead going to come up with something that can do real harm to Americans and I think to the whole world.
Right, and that's the basic, just to say to people that there might be a country, I know, you and I were talking earlier about examples, say Sri Lanka, where Americans buy a lot of clothes, but Sri Lanka does not buy a lot of gas turbines, for example, right? That's not a trade imbalance that would need to be corrected, right? But they're approaching it as if it is.
Right. I mean, I certainly expected, frankly, that, China would be on the list, maybe even Europe. But I was surprised to see, like you said, Sri Lanka, Jordan is on the list, Zambia is on the list. And the reason is just because, we happen to buy a lot of textiles and jewelry and coffee from those countries, and they don't buy that much, high-tech equipment or, gas turbines, like you said. And so, I think it's a mistaken philosophy to even try to calculate reciprocal tariffs the way that the way that they did. And then from then on, frankly, the more I looked into it, there was what I would characterize as a cascade of mistakes, making these tariffs even broader and even bigger.
So let's talk about that cascade.
Okay, so, this is what I was saying, right? There are things that these countries are providing a service for you. Cheap clothes at Walmart. Or whatever it is. Like there's manufacturing, American companies using outsourcing manufacturing because it's just cost effective. And they really couldn't get people to do the work here, right? So, Trump on one hand is getting rid of the labor force by going after immigrants, illegal immigrants. I mean, getting rid of like people who are going to do these jobs and then cutting us off from people who will do these jobs in other countries at affordable rates. And that's going to, all right, so you can make these clothes now, say in America, clothes that you used to buy in Sri Lanka, which is a small country that's very corrupt and very fucked up. And I'm sure that this is going to devastate their economy. I was in Sri Lanka. I was there for a while, a couple of months. I had to go there to renew our visas when we were in India. and it is a fucked up country with a lot of issues, right? Corruption, and it's an island country, sort of like almost like Cuba is to America. It's Sinhalese people and people from Tamil, the Tamilians and Sinhalese, and they have this war. They have the Tamil Tigers, which are supposed to be a terrorist group, and there are all problems with foreign countries manipulating them and off the charts corruption. But this is the kind of thing that'll devastate that country because, again, and what you used to buy from them is going to be 4 or 5 times as much at Walmart, say, or any of these other stores. And so this is, we'll see the ripple effects. But if this thing goes south, which, if it doesn't, it doesn't. And then there's nothing really to talk about. Like, it's only whether this affects you and me in a way where people like, you fucked us, Trump, right? Like, there's that element where there's just almost a rebellion but not even just anti-Trumpers, but Trumpers and people who thought Trump would do a better job than Biden. They were kind of on the fence and these things. A massive rejection of his policies where the Republicans all start bailing on him. Because they'll bail on him in a second because they don't like the motherfucker in the first place. And once he loses his party, then he's just going to be sitting there like, then whatever he does then, the guy's just oblivious to all these things. And like, right now it's an emperor has no clothes type situation with the people who are supporting him. And so, like, we'll see. It'll kind of be fun to watch. Interesting in a way, but because you haven't seen anything like this bad of a fucking massive policy. And it's, it's predicated on the idea that he thinks the world economy and the American economy are stable, and they're not. They're a debt-based fiasco. And, I said this a long time ago, they can kind of keep the thing going along as everyone agrees to just keep on fudging the numbers and pretending that the debt-based currency has more value than it does. But if there's, one person says, fuck you, just like with nuclear bombs, like Trump dropped a nuclear bomb into the world economy. And, this is going to devastate people's confidence in it, in all of it, currencies, and as this plays out.
Because it comes down to the equation. They put this equation out that looks like it could have come from Einstein. This complicated equation, we'll throw it up. This is the sort of stuff you don't know you would see in econometrics or something like that. But it's a very fancy looking equation. It essentially boils down to you're going to take the difference between the exports and imports of a country, right? And you're going to calculate your tariffs based off of that. That's the essential thing. And then just your bottom line on this formula, is it good or no?
Yeah, so the formula is definitely not good. That was the point I was making, is even the derivation of the formula, no matter what they do with it, I think it is not good trade policy. But they went further. You do still have to plug some numbers into it.
So let's do that. Okay, because I said, hold on, while you're
Sure.
talking here, I said I had my sheet, so I put it on a whiteboard, as you and I discussed I might try to do, just to try to make sense of it, okay? So this is where we are, all right? We took Japan, because Trump's been talking a lot about Japan, Brent. You went through Japan. So he got a 46% tariff. That day when he stood up there, 46% came up. So I've got the numbers here, the difference between the exports and imports. I filled in all the numbers. There's one number here, though, I'm going to put in red. That is 0.25. That's your number. That's the number. Well, that's the number they say is your number, right? And when you take that number, that's the magic number, I put it in red, and you plug it into their equation, you get 46%.
Well, close, but not quite. The number that I would put, based on my research, in for that value is 0.95.
Okay.
And that differs from the one that they used, like you said, which was 0.25. The difference is almost a factor of 4.
Yep. So you put 0.95. Then what happens to the 46?
Right. So, if you change a number in the denominator, the bottom part of the fraction, by a factor of 4, you're going to reduce the equation, the left-hand side, the tariff, by a factor of 4. So specifically, when Trump held up that sign and it had a 46 for Japan, if you instead used 0.95, which is what I think my research motivates, you'd get a number like 12%, much, much lower than 4.
So he says that this is a bullshit way to do it. But Trump fudged the numbers in a way to get a bigger number here. Like, they reduced the number that would give you 4 times the from 0.25 to 0.95. It reduced the number, and so it's going to be 4 times higher than it was supposed to be. This is exactly what Trump would do, because this is Trump wanting this number. So he's saying, all right, I think it should be a higher tariff. Let's fuck around in here. We'll pretend we have a formula, and the formula is based in imports to exports, which is a horrible way to do it. Trade deficit, where they are exporting more than they're importing. And Trump wants to get away from all trade deficits. To understand our place in the economy, we're importers because we have a lot of money. We can print money, and we have the world's biggest economy, and our currency is valued more than other countries. Other countries are exporters because they have cheap labor and a low currency. And there has to be that. And so Europe is importers, right? Like they trade with each other, but they have a very high currency, and that means they can buy cheap goods. Like that's why you can go to Walmart and get like a vice grips for like $5, right? And you're like, how is that possible? The steel alone. How can I buy a tool for that cheap? Like you go to their tool section, which is a good indicator because it's metal and plastic, and it's like if you look at what it would cost to build that thing in America, like a vice grips, it would be $20 or more, right? And so this is where it's going to drive your prices up because your currency has a high value, so you can buy cheap shit from people doing slave labor for you in other countries. It's a fucked up system. For the people in poor countries, it's totally unfair, and they work 12-hour days for $1, $2 or $5 or some crazy shit like that. And that's why you can get cheap shit at Walmart. So it's a fucked up system anyway. Like it should come down. But that's not why Trump's doing it. Trump's doing it because he wants to squeeze more out of all this, and he can't, right? Because what's going to happen is he can squeeze more in terms of the, big money for trade, his people who are going to develop factories and shit like that, possibly, like rich people. But the average person is going to pay a lot more for the shit they buy from Walmart and these other places, right? Things that are imported because of this discrepancy between currencies.
46%. And it doesn't even have to be that extreme. If you picked a number like 3, you'd still go down to 15%, much lower. And the other thing I did want to just mention, because you said they got that 25 from you. To be clear, I don't know where they got that 0.25.
Right.
And
Well,
what
they
I
say they
find
got it from you. I
astounding-
should have been more accurate there. Yeah.
Well, not quite. I mean, it's this is an unbelievably consequential policy. I mean, I listened to the guests in your interview just now. Markets are moving tremendously. I mean, this is a really, really consequential policy for the world, for the country, for everyone. And yet the whole methodology explaining how they did this is, a couple pages long, and I can't answer that question. I have colleagues saying, what is that 0.25 number? And, for instance, I don't even know.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you talk about literally you could have things like war and peace depending on it. I mean, you go from 46 to 12 and do Trump's math and take half, you'd be looking at 6% instead of 24. I mean, it is just absolutely stunning to think about that. And I think so important that you say all of that. A lot of it could come down to this one number, your number, that's just who knows where the heck it came from. I mean, it's stunning. Brent, I really appreciate your time and thank you very much.
All right. That was actually kind of interesting. But, Trump lies and makes shit up. When he said they're eating the dogs, he didn't care how that affected the Haitian people. He didn't look to see if it was true. In fact, he was probably told it wasn't true when he said it anyway. Either eating the dogs, right? I'll show you that after I'm done talking here. But like Trump saying shit like that, it's him just lying. Just like he lied about Canada's dairy tariffs. And they know that he's lying, and smart people know he's lying. And even people in his own administration know he's lying. And he's bluffing, and he just uses the truth like a weapon. Lying. He uses lies as manipulating the truth as a weapon, and using it as an excuse to bully these other countries and do bad shit. And you can't win that way. Like you can win as a sociopath, but not as in business maybe. You can lie and manipulate, but even then, that shit comes back to you. And people that you're lying about them, you develop lots of enemies. Your word doesn't mean anything anymore. It was amazing Trump survived in business as long as he did. Never mind karma and things like that. But in politics, you can't do that. Like him bullying people and trying to bully these countries and saying that they'll come to the table and they'll make deals when he's saying he's not even looking to make deals. And like I said in my 2 videos ago, they're already fuck you America. Like that's what the controllers are. That's why they're letting Trump do this, because they can't provide your lifestyle anymore. That's been obvious. They've been saying this for a number of years. Global warming, they tried all these ways to reduce your lifestyle. And Americans say, fuck you. Americans like, well, we're not going to do that. Look, we got guns. We're not going to do that, right? And they've tried to find ways to, again, bring in a reduction in your whatever it might be, selling a new world order, as as it used to be called. Now it's the Trump world order. And so they had to do some other thing, and they have to have someone to blame. And, when Americans are complaining about what happened, they'll be like, well, you elected this asshole. You voted for him, right? This is on you guys, so, I mean, it's coming. It's obvious. Like, this is, he's a dope. And, let's go to the eating the dogs meme here.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
So, on the good side of things, this doesn't affect me because I have well water, and I wouldn't really, I'd stay away from tap water as much as possible, like almost never. Like maybe once, I mean, like I wouldn't drink water at a restaurant. I don't drink water like from a water fountain or something like that, right? And we have well water, and well water has its own issues, but there's it doesn't affect me. But this is something for RFK Jr.
Fight over fluoride in drinking water on full blast. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. doubling down on his calls to ban the mineral from public water supplies, a move that would reverse a decades-long practice the CDC has called one of the greatest public health achievements in U.S. history.
And the era of fluoridated toothpastes and mouthwashes, it makes no sense to have fluoride in our water.
The EPA now re-examining research on fluoride's possible health effects, and Kennedy telling the Associated Press he plans to direct the CDC to stop recommending fluoride in drinking water.
So they're saying RFK Jr. launches new push to ban fluoride in drinking water. He's not making it illegal. He's saying they're not going to recommend it anymore. And that means that these various cities can make a decision on their own. And it would take some push from the citizenry to go to their town hall and go to their, whatever reservoir you have, wherever you get your water. You'd have to go and push them to stop using fluoride. Although it's a cost, it might save some money. It doesn't probably cost all that much, because it's like a waste product. But, like it's kind of a positive thing. It's not a negative thing. But, he's not making it so that there'll be no fluoride in any water. He's making it so that they don't have to put it anymore. And they're making this like he's making some big decision when he's not.
Fluoridation nationwide, pointing to a recent report that found a statistically significant association between higher fluoride exposure and lower IQ scores in children.
Okay, so, there's lots of shit out there, research-wise. But the one thing logically about, like, I haven't drank fluoride in years. I don't use it in my teeth have been better. And, I've had to look into tooth health. I have some teeth issues, dental issues, which I've explained. But here's the thing. If you're going to randomly put something in water, let's say you put Prozac in water, right? Which they've suggested putting lithium or Prozac in water to calm down the population. So these are things that they might be doing already. Who knows? But let's say they did something like that. People drink different amounts of water depending on, how some people just consume lots of water. Some people drink lots of water. Cooking, that'd be how much cooking you use water in your cooking. And so if you're going to start putting shit in water as a way to medicate people, something like fluoride, you can't do it in a way that it's like random how much of a dose people are going to take, because dosing is important. dosing of anything. Like, fluoride is a class 4 neurotoxin, but they say, small amounts of it helps your teeth. I mean, there's a video I showed everybody of this guy dumping the fluoride in the water where you can see it says, toxic on it, right? And he's complaining because it's Chinese fluoride. It took me forever to find the fucking thing, but I had seen it years and years ago. I think I have the clip. If I have the clip, I'll put it at the end of this video. But let's say little doses of fluoride were good for your teeth. Let's say that's true. Let's say this is a real thing, which I don't agree with. But how do you control the dosage? What if somebody drinks 10 times the amount of water of an average person? Well, isn't that person at risk of getting, or even if it's a good medicine, you can overdose anybody. You can take too much of something, even supplements, right? And so whenever you start putting things in water, like you have to say, well, you should only drink this much water a day. There have to be warnings. Like if you put some kind of pharmaceutical drugs in there, you say, well, you can't take, if you drink a gallon a day, this is going to be, like some kind of long-term effects. Anyways.
Children. But that controversial analysis done outside the U.S. looked at fluoride levels more than double what federal regulators currently recommend in drinking water. The mineral has been widely added to water in the U.S. since the 1940s, preventing cavities, reducing oral health disparities, and saving money for everyone, according to the CDC.
Oh, good. These guys are so great. You get the idea here. I found this fluoride video. Let me show you this here.
Fluoride in it, but Rob Damaris has been concerned for years.
See, it says sodium fluoride, dangerous, poison, toxic by ingestion. Targets bones, organs. This isn't what the video's about, right? Target organs. It says all the stuff. It's warnings right here. And they're not even covering this. They show this and they don't even ask about this.
Years about what's in the supply he gets from China.
It's made in China to boot, right? So it's a neurotoxin that they're adding to the water supply, and it has a big warning on it. It says all the organs that it can affect, and then it comes from China, which is in itself, it's very sketchy, right?
The residue you see here is what won't dissolve when he puts the fluoride powder in the water. What is that?
We don't know.
You have no idea what's in there.
I don't know what it is. It's not soluble. And it doesn't appear to be sodium fluoride, so we're not quite sure what it is.
Now, sodium fluoride is the active ingredient in rat poisons and various insect poisons. It's a byproduct from aluminum, like it comes from aluminum waste product they can't get rid of because it's a toxin. So it's a pain for them to get rid of it. So they decided to put it in the drinking water, right?
Damaris says the residue clogs his machines and makes it difficult to get a consistent mix.
This is the thing they call a Fluoride Pro. There is something called a Fluoride Pro out there that they use to put fluoride into all the drinking waters across the country.
Mix. For almost a year, these fluoride pumps in Amesbury have been off, and the water department says they'll stay off until they can figure out what's in the fluoride. The department.
All right. So what in the fluoride that's causing it to not go into the system, right? And this guy has a little. I'll show you the news report from him.
The Department of Public Health says more than 650,000 customers in 44 communities are getting the product in question, and only Amesbury has temporarily stopped using it. But despite those concerns, we want to be clear. Both state and federal health officials tell Team 5 Investigates Chinese fluoride is safe.
It's safe. It's Chinese.
The New York company which supplies the fluoride in question says it is certified by the National Sanitation Foundation, which assures the quality of the product. And despite 1,000 complaints, the Centers for Disease Control also says it's safe, although testing continues to determine the precise composition of the residue.
They should test it to make sure that what they're putting in is safe for us to drink.
Paul Stewart lives in Newburyport and believes he has a right to know exactly what's in his water.
It's right here. Let's go back to this thing at the beginning here. Here it is at the beginning of the video again. Danger, poison, toxic by ingestion. Targeted organs and these other things, right? Bone, central nervous system, gastrointestinal system, teeth. It's actually bad for your teeth, it's saying here, right? The targeted organs. And so, they all saw this, right? They all saw this, this whatever it is, this warning. This woman's a reporter, and they're showing you this because it's coming from China, but the warning is for sodium fluoride. And let's say it had some medical benefit or some benefit for your teeth, like what they say it is, right? it's only going to be based in, for one, it needs to be applied directly to your teeth. It's not, it doesn't go into your teeth in terms of your, like through your body or whatever. So adding it to the water, it depends on how much you drink, how big you are. I mean, when you're doing dosages of any sort of medication, like I said, you just can't be random. And that's why they don't put shit in drinking water. Because some people are going to get too much of a dose, especially if it's freaking toxic. If too much of it's toxic, right? And, you know, they talked about putting like lithium in water, ways to... Okay, so I already said that in this video. Luckily, I re-listened to this meme. Because usually I don't. But, you know, this is... I said the same thing back when I made this meme 6 months ago, a year ago. When it took me forever to find this this video. And, you know, it was there. Okay, so just a few more things to say before I wrap up this video. Got one more thing to say about the tariffs. So we have well water, which is great, but like I said, sometimes when we get a lot of rain, it changes the well water and the filter needs changing. And I had my son take a look at, to watch the guy change the filter, thinking that he could take over that responsibility. He's the guy who my son is in charge of putting salt in the water. We have a system where you have to add salt. We have very hard water. You know, I've had a few different places I've lived where to have well water. And so some of them you need to add salt to it to make it better. You know, the wells are supposed to be shocked every once in a while. You're supposed to add bleach, which is something I don't like to do. That's a nightmare. But anyways, you know, there's issues with wells. Springs are even better. But there's issues. Like, you have to work at it. You just can't, you know, expect it just to come in the city water. And, you know, when I redid the tub, I had to turn the water off, and our water was coming out brown, so I had to change the filter. You have a whole house filter. And, you know, when it's under pressure, it's hard to get it out. It's hard to turn the thing and get it out. And, you know, I turned the water off, but I couldn't depressurize it. My son tried to help me, and we couldn't get the thing off. So I called the company, and they said it was like $187 for them to come out. And I'm like, well, just send me a video on how to do it, because I can't see it. I can't do it. And my son said they had a line that came off the system and drained the water. And I found a video about it, and it showed the two valves that you're supposed to open. One you open that drains the water. Another one, it lets air into the system so that the rest of the water can drain out from the inside the filter, you know, or that's going into the filter. You can't get the water out of the filter, and then it's easier to take off, and you don't like have this water spill on you. You know, we have a lot of clay and shit in the water, and so it's kind of messy. But what they had done, and I looked at the two valves that were on mine, and they were connected in a small hose. One went into the other valve, and I'm like, that doesn't seem right. So I FaceTimed somebody over there at my water company, and he said, oh, you got to cut one of those hoses. Some, you know, moron had linked the two valves together. And then, you know, so it was a whole thing. It's always something, right? Like, you know, I could have easily done the job if some person who worked there had fucked us over by connecting these two valves that were not supposed to be connected. You know, it's always something like this. You know, I mean, whatever water system you're using, there's like, you know, there's always stuff with it. You know, we're lucky to have water come into our homes the way we do. But the city water, that goes through a lot of different processing. It's bleached. You know, it goes through all these various pipes and things. Of course, it has the fluoride in it. And there's real issues with that. It's like dead water. You know, well water is great, but, you know, it's underground and stuff gets into it. You know, it could be any kind of number of things you might have. I mean, some people have uranium in their water and shit, right? And then now with fracking and all these things. And so, you know, water in the future is going to be, I mean, a commodity, like that's going to be much more value than it is now, because of all the things that are going to happen to the water supplies and, you know, all the things that we've done draining aquifers and the rest of it. And so to go along with that, you know, this thing with the tariffs, you know, making Trump the fall guy. And if you really understand this, even if you're a Trump person, Trump derangement syndrome, like I said, goes both ways. But if you're a Trump person who believes that the media and everybody's negatively obsessed with your hero Trump, you would then find it easy to believe. I would hope you would be able to see this easy easy to believe point that wouldn't Trump therefore make the perfect scapegoat if you are being demonized as a group, which you are to some extent by mainstream media, then you're being villainized as Trump supporters, and Trump's being villainized. Wouldn't it be great to make Trump a scapegoat so they could blame you, and they could also blame alternative media and all the things that Trump stands for, and they could blame anti-vaxxers, and they could blame RFK Jr., or they could blame everybody that Trump's associated with for the downfall of the world economy? Wouldn't it be great to pin this on? There's people like Trump supporters in every country in the world right now, nationalistic people, and, people who flirt with truther stuff. Wouldn't it be great for them to blame all of you and all of us and everybody associated with this kind of way of thinking for the failure of the economy, and Trump being the centerpiece of this? Of course, he's the perfect patsy for what they want to do. They want to say, okay, we submitted to your worldview. We let you guys run the show, you conspiracy theorists and you right-wing Republicans and you people, all the groups that Trump can be linked to, QBs and all the rest of it. We let you guys run it, and you guys destroyed the country. And so now we got to censor you. We got to take away, just all the things that they can do when there's catastrophic results from Trump's presidency. But if they let Trump fix the world, which he can't do, but let's say they did, they let him fix America, and it was a glory time, and this was the golden age of Trump. They allowed Trump to bring in the golden age. That would mean that they would validate Trump and all his people. They would empower you and embolden you, and what would make you think they want to do that? And so the only thing that Trump would be good for, or useful to them, is being a scapegoat. And if they tried to assassinate him the first time, which of course that was fake as fuck, they would totally do it now. Like they could stop him in a number of ways. You got to look at this as that the controllers, and I should say this again in future videos. I should say this a lot, but the controllers are on board with what he's doing. The people who control the system, whoever it is, whatever group you want to say, whatever groups there are, whoever is the shadow government in this particular time and place, and the people who are in charge of Trump, they would say, hey, you can't do this. And so they want to take America down, and they want to blame Trump. Like, those are the only two logical explanations for what's going on here. Because if he was going to do something to destroy them, the way that Trumpers think that he could, you would have to believe that there's a real presidency. And if you believe that they failed in their, the Secret Service and everybody failed to protect Trump on the campaign trail, you don't think they could murder him now? It's not that hard to murder a president, regardless of how much security they have or any of these things. They want him to do this. That's the only logical explanation. And if they want him to do this, then fuck, this is really bad for you, me, and the rest of everybody. And so, I just want to add that. I'll cover this again in future videos. I need to say this over and over again because nobody's saying these things. At least the majority of people aren't, even in the truth community. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.